your business, please don't get involved. I got money on my mind.
So, let's get this party started. Where the party at?
It's right here, big dog. The party is right here.
Right here, man.
You sure about that?
The party is right here, big dog. It's right here.
This trio.
The party is here, and we here to stay, and we ain't going nowhere. So let's get this party started. So let's get this first topic out. I want to talk a little bit about BIG3 Basketball. And for people who don't know, BIG3 Basketball has been around for quite some time. I would say probably the last 10 years. I know Ice Cube, who was the founder of BIG3 Basketball. I think it's a formidable sport now, although it's always been a sport, but it's carving out its position in major sports, if you know what I mean. From a media perspective, from coverage from media and everything like that. So BIG3 is growing. It's going to grow bigger. I think they're going to expand to more teams. I'm going to have Najee chime in on a lot of this because I'm not as basketball, my Najee's IQ is 200. My basketball IQ is probably 50 or 60. Let's just say that. So I want to talk a little bit about a blow up this past weekend with Dwight Howard and Lance Stephenson. Dwight Howard, Stephenson. Yeah. He used to actually, Howard played, he's from Atlanta, which is my hometown, of course. And he was a superstar in Atlanta in high school. And he went on to become a mega star at the NBA level. He's been in the NBA for a long time. He won a championship with the Lakers in 2020. I can just go on and on about, he's Hall of Fame. Yep, absolutely. So I can go on and on about his accomplishments and what he's contributed toward basketball in itself. So he went over to Taiwan and played basketball as well. And now he's in the BIG3. And Ice Cube has got some pretty decent players in the BIG3, ex-NBA players. Some of the best players from basketball that you can pick up from the parks and the streets. He's got the top basketball players from the streets.
I've seen Beasley out there.
He's got Michael Beasley. He's got Howard, and I can go down a roster of names. Steven Jackson, and it's the thing I like about BIG3 is it's not a game that puts a lot of pressure on the players. I mean, they're playing technically a half-court game, so anytime you technically playing somewhat of a half-court game, it's a little bit more personable that you can relate with as opposed to running up and down full court, in my opinion.
Being exhausted when they're not in top-tier shape.
Exactly. And I watched some of the playoffs a couple of years ago at a BIG3, and it was very interesting. I think Ice Cube has got a really good thing going over there. I would hope he stay with it and continue to grow that league because that league helps young African-American men make money and make young African-American men successful who weren't able to make it to the NBA level, who weren't able to be commercialized like the Dwight Howards and like the Steven Jacksons and like the Michael Beasleys. Michael Beasley, he's one of the best players I've seen because he played for Miami for quite some time, the Miami Heat. He was University of Kansas. He was a superstar at Kansas. And to have him in the league along with some other players is it's a game changer to me. So my thing is Howard and Lance had a fight this weekend. The fight wasn't initiated by Howard, but it looks like another player from Howard's team, and I think I don't know his actually name. I'll have to look his name up, but it looks like it escalated. And what I want to ask Najee is, if it escalated, how did it escalate, and how did it end up in the stands with those players on the ground for quite a few minutes before they can be separated? NBA basketball, to me, is somewhat different because when they do get in fights, I've only seen one out of control fight in the NBA. That was the Indiana versus Detroit. That was an out of control fight where, Ron Artest, which is Meta World Peace, he went up in the stands and then it was just a fight of ages for basketball. But the NBA usually don't tolerate those type of fights. You know,
the Nuggets and the Knicks. That's when Carmelo Anthony used to play for the Nuggets.
I remember that one. I remember that.
He got a little cheap shot. He got nasty from there.
Yeah. So to just compare fights between the NBA and the one I saw from the Big Three, Najee, let me ask you: does Ice Cube need to impose more restrictions or more oversight on what's going to be delegated out if those players do get into fights? Because we don't want those players fighting in the games. We want those players to play. We want them to get physical with each other. We want them to play. We want them to be as competitive as they can be, but we don't need to see guys swinging on each other and then trying to wrestle each other to the ground. And this was, I mean, these guys were literally going for broke, because I could see Stevenson's face where he was pissed off. And, help me understand what Ice Cube needs to do to make this thing where we don't see fights like that again.
Well,
or not as bad.
Times when it comes to sports, that it becomes highly competitive, and especially when it's close, that you're gonna have scuffles and cussing and your mamas and your wives and all this type of stuff. That's a lot. That's part of the game majority of the time when you're talking about trying to get under somebody's skin. It's really just between you keeping your composure, and then on top of it, when you got the NBA, you got several referees, you have several teammates, you have coaching staff, you have a lot more bodies to be able to stop a fight and people get out of control. I mean, really between them keeping their composure, and if anything, just have a couple more security out there to be able to break up scuffles and stuff. I mean, that was really between what Lance Stephenson used to do in his career anyway, is to get on people's skin and start stuff to get them out of their game. He did that with LeBron and Wade plenty of times. So this nothing new.
He blew in LeBron's ear back in 2014. I remember that. Yeah.
That was the thing that, I admired LeBron about, even at that time in his career, the way he conducted himself and composed himself and not let that guy play into his psyche, because he was really trying to taunt LeBron to get inside of his ear, because who blows in another man's ear? If that ain't punking you out, man. LeBron just shook his head like, here we go again. Because you blew his ear like as if you was doing something to a girl when you try to get close up with her and make out with her. You get that close with him. He was just in the midst of the game, and LeBron got his hands on his knees and stood ready for the play to begin. And here comes this girl come blowing his ear. LeBron just shook his head. And that right there, man, that was classic. It was really classic at the time, because I watched it in real time, and it was so hilarious to me, because LeBron just blew him off. Like, here this dude is, this silly dude again.
That's right.
They gonna let me get in my head. That was his game plan. And the thing is, watching that game and watch that scuffle yesterday, it looked like two old guys at the corner store fighting over some MD 2020 or some Irish Red Rose wine, because it's just too old to be out there scuffling like that, man. It's just what the hell?
The reason I'm laughing, because I can relate with what you said, because I've seen those type of fights growing up with guys up on the corner at the Lily Dilly with MD 2020 fighting over a ball of MD 2020 on who gonna take the next hit, because they would buy a ball of MD 2020 and 3 or 4 guys chip in. They chip 30 cents in or whatever, and they buy a ball of
a wine.
Yeah. And they would buy that MD 2020, and boy, they'd be arguing and fighting over that bottle and who was going next. Let me get the last hit. So that's why I was laughing at what you just said. So now here's the thing. When you have 3-on-3 basketball, it's very up close and personal a lot, because, you basically have 3 players defending the basket. You have 3 players on offense going toward the basket.
A lot more. When it's 5-on-5, it's a lot of, you got players that can hide all the time and do certain things. But
exactly.
When it's 3-on-3, it's so much more spacing. And if you don't play defense or anything, Somebody's gonna get an easy layup every time. So you have to be more involved when it's less people on the court like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it looks like what actually happened was Dwight Howard bumped Stevenson, and then I guess they got a little bit somewhat closer, and then Stevenson kind of pointed at Howard because Howard basically, I could read his lips. Well, what you gonna do? I mean, kind of like, I'm going to impose my will on you. What you gonna do about it? And then Stevenson went to raise his arm up, and that's when Howard grabbed him, and they both went to the ground eventually. That kind of, to me, makes the league look amateurish in a way, from a perspective of losing control, players losing control. Although all professional leagues, they fight. All professional leagues, they get into scuffles. But what I think, and from my perspective of the big three, is they, like you said, and Isaiah, you made a lot of good points on the fact they have to have it better secured around the court to be able to deal with issues like that, so they can get people in between these players. Because a lot of times in the NBA, you'll see coaches, assistant coaches, they'll come out and try to separate players up to try to get, things back in line and back in order from a perspective where you don't have this chaos going on the court, if that makes sense.
That happens in twofold though, DC. When you got a player that's out there fighting, not only they don't want the guy to get injured in a fight, but then you don't want the suspensions and all the technicals that comes behind all this stuff. It really hurts your team when you're out there fighting. But sometimes guys get emotional and they just take it upon themselves to retaliate on a hard foul, or either you're just pissed because you're losing, and it just explode to the degree where they start scuffing the man. But it's just so many variables can happen in a fight like that, because those guys wind up in the stands, man.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
All over you and crap, man.
Yeah.
Man, you got these guys 200 plus falling on your legs while you're there, and then especially if they're together, you got 400 some pounds falling on you. So this is gonna be a bad situation, but it's a competitive edge when guys are looking for when they playing these sports like that. You got these two alpha males, and they're competing, and one of them want to intimidate the other, and the other one is not gonna have it. DC, you said it best. You don't want a man taking advantage of you against your own will, and that's what it is.
Yeah. And when a man is imposing that will on you at will, I mean, you got to try to do something to slow it down or stop it, right? So, Najee, what kind of look you think it gave BIG3 Basketball? I mean, especially if you're watching it on ESPN or any other sports channel, what type of look is that? You think that look needs to be changed to make sure the league is clean of that type of activity?
I mean, as long as they're not really throwing hands, I think people actually like that, because, like, from what they're saying right now, that this game's too soft when it comes to the NBA. They don't. It's as soon as somebody yell a word, you got a referee jumping in front of them already, so you don't get to see any passion in the sport. You just see them actually just playing the game. And a lot of times that takes a lot of, like, when on NFL, they was taking a lot of the celebrations away. When you take the celebrations away, it takes the fun out of the game, because I mean, you look forward to scoring and the celebration, because now you got the monkey on your back, like, we chilling, we having fun. So when you take a lot of the edge out, the celebration, and just the passion of it, then I mean, then it takes the fun. It takes the fun out of the sport, to be honest. So a lot of people are watching the Big Three because they're doing stuff in the Big Three they're not doing in the NBA, and plus a lot of the players that they grow up watching are still playing. Like like Dwight Howard, he came in the league with an 04, and he hasn't played in the last 2-3 seasons already. So I mean, people look forward to seeing their older players, because Steven Jackson, before Kobe passed away, he asked Kobe, "Please come to the league. Like, we would love to have you here." Like, that was the reason why the Big Three was formed, to have retired players, or players that has NBA talent but can't make it to the NBA. It was just a different phase of basketball that people was looking into. That's why the sport itself has grown in the last decade.
Yeah. DC, I can clearly see the horizon of it, as well as every aspect of what Najee just explained is altogether true. Now, from my perspective, I could see it because you take a superstar that he's up in age, but he can't make it on a team, but he's still being able to bring some bucks out there in the seats, and because you still know him as Dwight Howard, and you remember those golden years of his. But then on the second note of that, those tickets are inexpensive, so they don't cost as much as an NBA set of tickets.
Exactly, because that means they don't pay the players as much either, right?
They don't, because they don't have all the TV rights money too coming in. So it's actually a good thing of entertainment. You get your friends and your girlfriend, or either you're just buddies, and just go out and watch a good game of three people playing, and it's exciting because you know these folks.
Right,
Just
right.
think about what Najee just said with Dwight Howard been coming to the league in 04, you said, dude? Yeah, 04. It's just imagine that's what, 16 years ago.
That's a long time. Yeah,
That's a long
yeah.
time. So you got to really know this person 16 years.
Nah, actually, that's 21 years.
Well, 21. Okay, well, 21 years. If it's 21 years, look at it. That means you're gonna be on a day. He came to the league, you have a newborn baby. Now that kid is
And
born.
baby's an adult. Yep, a
Mhm.
whole adult. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, man. That's
So-
amazing. Yeah, that's true. It is 21 years. Yeah.
Yeah, they got some really good players, and I'm here on the Big Three's website right now. And a lot of the players, some of them were superstars in the NBA, one of them being Dwight Howard. Lance Stephenson was a decent player when he was in there. But one player I'm looking at now for the Detroit team in Big Three is Joe Johnson. And Joe Johnson?
Oh, yeah.
Joe
was
Johnson
nice.
Joe Johnson got a nice game. To me, he's a legend in his own right because he was able to parlay his career in the NBA to a level that a lot of other people never can attain. They can't even dream about aspiring to reach what Joe Johnson has already reached. He plays for Detroit. And by the way, Joe Johnson is a host as well on Nightcap, along with Shay Shay and Ocho. So he's on and off. You will see Joe Johnson on that show. And listen, those guys over at Nightcap, and since they've added Joe Johnson, to me, it was a game changer for them.
Yeah.
Nightcap, to me, I watch a lot of podcasts, and from the bottom of my heart, I haven't watched a podcast as raw as us other than Nightcap. I mean, because you go to Nightcap, it's all unfiltered, raw stuff, kind of like what we do here.
Yeah.
And Joe Johnson is a part of that. So he's just one of the players that I mentioned in the league, but I was looking at, some other players. Ice Cube has compiled a lot of good players from recruiting players from New York courts. I mean, in the New York City basketball courtyards and courtyards from Chicago and places all over the country, not LA, because they have tournaments out on Venice Beach too. And I used to go out there and watch Venice Beach tournaments, and they get really intense, man. It's just like you at a professional basketball game, in my opinion, watching it right there on the court in Venice Beach off the Strand. So one thing I will say is the league is going to grow. I don't think it's going to go anywhere but up. They're not going anywhere but up. But however, in my opinion, the image of the league has to be polished for it to be on TV, to get those massive TV contracts like you see the NBA, the NFL, National Hockey League.
Well, DC is new. Is a new,
and it's fairly new, so we are giving it a chance, right?
Yeah, you got to give it a chance. You're talking about the NBA is 80 years old, and football is older than that. So you got to give it an opportunity. You talk about a young guy like Ice Cube is our age, and he created something like this. Those guys who created football has been pushing daisies for years and years and years. They've been gone. So
exactly,
one generation of a guy who created something like that. I think it was genius for him to create
no doubt about it.
Because he's giving guys income, he's giving people something to do. He's got a positive thing going more so than the little nitpicky fights out there. Those little brawls over there, it's nothing. Because if you think about hockey, these guys knock each other teeth out. and don't get put in the penalty box for nothing but 2 minutes and come back out and finish their game up. So it's no big deal with this little fight. That's all in the game. People understand there's going to be a fight here and there. I mean, so long as there ain't no freaking drive-bys after the damn game, because it's going to be okay. I mean, everybody expected for it to be a fight. Look at the cage fighting. That started about 20 years ago. It's got massive big. The cage fighting. That used to be
You're
something
talking
where
about
it was,
MMA. Yeah,
yeah,
MMA, mixed martial
just
arts.
of course, it's gonna be the same thing. It can blow up just like that. It's gonna be big as that. You know,
Right.
because you're talking about a team sport as opposed to somebody in there beating the snot out of each other and coming back with cauliflower ears and a busted broken nose and stuff like that. Even
Hmm.
now, I can kind of stomach watching the men, but I surely the hell don't like to see these beautiful girls get. I can't stand to see girls get beat up like that and bloody, But
Well,
it's
especially
wrong.
UFC. Oh God,
Yeah, yeah,
it,
man. They
it
be
it it
throwing
looks
down
so
in there,
it looks
man.
awful.
It look gruesome, man. Shoot, to see a girl
Well,
bleeding
it's a
like that.
blood
And
and guts sport, and people love to see blood and guts. I mean, and this
yeah.
is real time blood and guts in real
Hmm.
time, where, as opposed to professional wrestling, it's
Yeah.
staged. But when you get
Yeah.
into that ring in UFC, or MMA or Pride,
Hmm.
which come out of Japan and several other
Hmm.
organizations in
Yeah.
Japan, they are really putting they inflicting pain on each other, and they're inflicting
Yeah.
damage to their bodies and to their brains and stuff like that. So people love it's been that way since the beginning of time, even back in the era when they had the Romans and the Greeks and stuff. They used to watch men fight each other to the death, or a
Mhm.
man fighting an animal to the death. But getting back to basketball with Big Three, let me ask you a question about this, Najee. This fight could have actually gave them more exposure because it was a viral
Of
moment.
course it
You
could.
think about
I
it, it
mean,
went
yeah.
viral. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
it's all over every particular
Yeah.
news channel that I've seen, plus on YouTube. So sometimes good, bad, or indifference, sometimes if you perceive it as bad, it's still press.
Yeah,
It's
but
still
I just
news.
said that. I
Yeah,
Yeah.
just said that.
when it first happens, yes, but when it's a continual basis, then it just looked like it's out of control. So by them
Yeah.
doing this, yes, right now, it
Hmm.
brought, it put some spotlight on it. But if you continue to do that, then it really does look out of control. So long as they, like I said, as long as they keep their composure and how they play, they should be fine. That's what I was saying.
That was the point I made. I said, long as it's not a drive-by
Yeah.
afterwards, people gonna go because you don't want the fans to be, don't be afraid
Yeah, because
to go to
the
the game.
fans could take it into their own hands, right?
Oh yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Dwight
I
Howard's
mean,
my favorite player, and Stevenson's the other
uh,
fan's favorite player, and
yeah.
then we get into it out in the streets over it, right?
Yeah, and that's what I'm telling you. So long as there's nothing like that, it's going to continue to grow because now you got people who going to be watching and trying to see when this next big fight going to be because there's going to be bound to be something
Mhm.
going on like that. Especially when you got a man blowing in your damn ear trying to turn you out. That's what he's trying to do.
You say he was trying to turn LeBron out.
Yeah. I thought that was just, man, I just couldn't understand
Well,
the
it was a
psyche of
defining
him.
moment for Lance Stephenson
Mhm.
because if you think about it, nobody knew who Lance
Yeah,
Stephenson was until he blew in his
absolutely.
ear.
And
He
you know
he
what?
went
For a
viral. That
while,
was his
DC.
viral moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We used to call it 15 minutes of fame back in the day where, everybody was looking to have their 15 minutes of fame. Now everybody's looking for that viral moment. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how many minutes it is, but if you can get a viral moment, that's really what catapults a lot of people up toward the top. Now, let me ask you one last question, guys. Do you think there should be punishment delegated out for this, or they should just be warnings and then they move on to the next game?
It's so long as nobody didn't get hurt, that's all in the game. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
Nobody didn't get hurt. They ain't got no lawsuits going on and stuff like that. I think they need to let these guys play because that's what they're ultimately saying that the game has gotten soft.
Right.
Where you can't even have, because the one thing about most of these things these guys all know each other. You see them in the street, you see them hanging
Sure.
out, you see them at different functions. So they
And
actually
work out
know.
together and all that.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
a heat of the battle at that moment. You know, they just have their little differences, and it's just a man thing. They have their little heated moments, and then they swallow that stuff, and it's gone by. You know, and they don't worry about it. So I don't think they need to go to the degree where they start fining people and suspending people off of something like that. You know, now if you've got in something like that and the game is over and you still got the mentality where you're going to get them back, like something that Shaq did back in the day with Ostertag.
Greg Ostertag, yeah.
When
He
was
dogged
like,
Greg
when
Ostertag out,
I
man.
seen you, when the next time I see you, it's on site.
It's on site. Yeah.
Yeah, so it can't be like that, man. If it's not like that, it's all right. Yep.
Well, it looks like Clyde Drexler, ex NBA player Clyde Drexler, is the commissioner for the Big Three. And pretty much he controls the operational side of the league, in my opinion, where he's just like Roger Goodell and Adam Silver for the NBA. So I would think Clyde Drexler and his team would look it over and possibly determine what is needed. I personally agree with you guys. I think it just needs to be a stern warning. They need to put a memo out to all of the players in the league. Look, this is the way we gonna do it. You can get as intense and you can get as heated as you want, even if you shove each other or anything like that. But if it turns into one of those out of control, fights where nobody can control it and then it goes up into the stands, that's very problematic, I would say.
Yeah.
Looked like I was looking at some of the salaries here until they get a major TV contract, which I think they have some TV contracts already, but they don't have them like, of course, the other two leagues that we mentioned because those are legacy leagues. Some of the salaries are $42,000 up to $55,000 a year. So some of those players, they potentially could have second jobs with they're working to try to, to earn to be able to survive while they're trying to get to where they're getting
Majority of
to.
them players made enough money anyways. After the salary,
Especially Dwight Howard and Lance Stephenson, you would think.
More than anything.
Yeah.
It's just really they love the game, to be honest.
Yeah. It says here the average salary is $37,000 a year, a little bit over $37,000 a year. So that's not a lot. But if you're doing something you love doing, it's not about the money. And
yeah.
Once again,
and
like you said, Najee,
season, so actually the money's up there anyway. They don't
exactly.
play all season. Their games are very limited.
How many games will they play in the season, DC?
For the Big Three?
Yeah. Because I imagine they playing each other several times, 3 or 4 times a season to spread the season out a little bit. But
so it says here that they got 12 teams and they play up to, just a second, this computer's a little bit slow.
Or something like that.
Something like 30 games, I would say. I'm just going to throw a number out there.
But if you think about it, that little money right there pay their cable bill. It just will pay a couple bills for them. Because if you think about most of those guys, they got their pensions coming in. If they play 6 or 7 years, they got a pension coming in. It give them something to do. They stay in shape. It's a good thing. It's a good fit for them to be able to do something like this. Otherwise, they'll be playing pickup games at the neighborhood YMCA. So this is
not earning anything, right? They don't earn any money with pickup games like that.
Yeah,
you know. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on this league because I think it's a great league and it's going to be a super good league coming up once they get once the more people start paying attention to these games, it's just going to go up and up and up and up. And I believe that they're going to reach the promised land.
You've reached the end of another episode of the DC Stewart Sports Talk podcast. Be sure to connect with us at Facebook and Twitter.com. Your voice is important, so head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Catch our next episode.